My name is Meyasha Dunn. I am a registered nurse. I am divorced and I have a 16-year-old daughter. I was born in Anniston, Alabama on a military base. And we moved a lot when I was young. My nickname is Mimi, and it comes from the correct pronunciation of my name, which is Meyasha, and I hated it. And it was difficult to say for other people, and I got tired of correcting them. So in school one day, someone said Meyasha, and I rolled with it, but close friends and family, even today, call me Mimi. Growing up, I only knew my mom's side of the family, and her and my dad both were in the military. And we probably moved. We moved a lot because I don't know what age I was. And honestly, I don't know what happened between my mom and my dad. But I remember her packing the car. And I have a little sister that's 3 years younger than me, but I don't remember childhood with her. But I remember my mom packing the car, and we went to my dad's job. They had a conversation, and I remember my mom getting upset, and I guess the conversation wasn't going the way she wanted to go. And I don't remember what she said, but I remember her trying to run him over in the parking lot. And I remember his army fatigues on. I remember being in the car, looking back, thinking, you just gonna let her leave? We stayed on a military base in Augusta, and my mom and dad fought a lot, like verbally and physically. And he had been previously married, and he had 3 children from their marriage, and they lived in Florida, and occasionally they would come up. But he let her leave, and I remember looking out the back window of the car thinking I was never going to see him again. And we came to Mississippi. I don't remember, like my childhood is really, really choppy. But I remember maybe being 6. And I remember one time we came to Mississippi and we went to this older couple's house. And my mom told me, this is my mom and dad. I don't know why I didn't think she had parents, but there was a little boy at the house. And my grandmother introduced him to me as my brother. He was darker, he was older, but he was petite like we were. And I remember, I didn't really even know my grandparents. Honestly, that may have been my first time meeting them. But I remember telling that lady, that's not my brother. Who is he? And she said, he is. He's really your brother. And he didn't like me. I remember him not liking me. But apparently it's because he was different and I used to call him names. So we fought at a young age. But I remember leaving, but he didn't come with us. He stayed. And we moved around a lot. Not because at this point, I think my mom had gotten out of the military, and I didn't understand why we moved so much. One period I stayed with my aunt, and yes, I would say my childhood was trouble because we moved so much. Probably the 3rd time she snatched me out of school, I was traumatized. Every time the intercom would come on at school, I froze because I was thinking, gosh, they finna call me and we gonna leave. And I remember one day, I probably was in the 1st grade, and this probably was like the 3rd time we had moved. But I remember the girls in my class will always say, why don't you ever smile? Why don't you ever talk to us? And I never said anything. And they called my name on the intercom that day and asked me to come to the office, and I just started crying. And one of the girls said, It's okay. Your mom is just coming to get you to take you to an appointment. You'll be back at school tomorrow. But when I got to the front of the classroom, the teacher told me, get all of your things. And I knew we were moving again. But I had some good childhood memories. But they probably came at like 9 or 10. But even then, I was bullied a lot. And my brother didn't like me. We were very different. And he used to pick on me and we fought. So between fighting at school and fighting my brother, I grew up tough and just fighting. I chose to be a nurse because at the age of 9, I wanted to be 3 things. I wanted to be a doctor, an attorney, or a nurse. I didn't want to be in school the rest of my life, so I gave up attorney and doctor. And I like to read, and just from early childhood, I felt like nursing was my calling. I have trouble connecting with people, but I love the education side of it, or taking care of them and seeing them when they actually get to go home and they're better than the way they were when they came in. When I found out I was gonna be a mom, I think I was age 20, and I didn't know I was pregnant. It was around Christmas, and we had went to the mall, and my friend called screaming and crying in the phone that she was pregnant, and I asked her a bunch of questions. And I asked her, like, how do you know? And she was like, duh, my cycle didn't come on. And I laughed. I was like, girl, go to the doctor. It's nothing. And I remember hanging up and was thinking, you laughing? Yours ain't came. So I was like nervous the rest of the day in the mall. And then like the next 2 days, I remember cramping. I was thinking, oh, it's coming. It's coming. Then it never came. And I remember getting sick one night, and January came, and I ended up telling my boyfriend, who's my daughter's dad at the time, my cycle didn't come. And I was ashamed. I remember going to Walmart, getting a pregnancy test, and checking out in the pharmacy, and I took it under my arm. And I swore if anybody asked me, I would say I bought it for a friend. But I got home and peed on this stick, and you know you're supposed to wait those few minutes. Like as soon as I looked down, it was positive. And he wasn't sad or happy, but I felt devastated because I was thinking, I'm 20, about to be 21. I don't want a baby. I want to go to nursing school out of the state of Mississippi, and I have nothing to offer this child. So I cried for months. And then I didn't want to be one of those moms that had a baby, left it with the parents, and then I went on to live my life. And then me and my mom didn't have the best relationship, so I wasn't leaving my child with her. I didn't. I don't feel like I ever got the natural sense to, I asked a lot of questions, and I read a lot of books. I read a lot of books, and her dad's mom was in the picture. And I remember coming home from the hospital, and I was afraid to give my daughter a bath. I remember calling, crying, saying, she's so tiny. I'm a drowner. Like, I need help. So she came and gave me the bath, and she was like, it's gonna be fine. And yes, initially. Naturally, it came. And then in my mind, I just wanted her to be happy. I wanted her to be happy. And she was. She was a happy child. Her dad was there. So we weren't struggling financially. We always had food. I wasn't worried about if she would be happy or if she had a good childhood or not because her dad was there. No, we started dating in 2003. And I think we officially called it quits in 2010. And I gave birth in 2006. So she was 4. Yes, her dad remained in her life, but not in the way that I wanted him to be there. Yes, I got married, and at the time I was working a contract job. I went to work one afternoon and I was in the med room pulling meds or something, and I heard the door open. And I worked on a female unit, and there were really no men on the unit. So I could tell from the ruckus that the women were making that a man was on the building. But they kept carrying on. They were really, really loud. So I peeped out of the med room to see what was going on, and I turned the corner and he was there. And I could smell his cologne even before I got to him, and one of the patients were flirting with him. And I jokingly told her, stop touching my husband. And she told me, I'm gonna fight you over this man. And we laughed about it or whatever, and we exchanged pleasantries. And I asked him something and he answered a few questions. And I told him, you cocky, huh? He was like, no, I'm just confident. I was like, and you're arrogant. So we made light of it. I went to break and he was outside and we exchanged numbers. And maybe 20 minutes later, he called me on the phone. Got to know each other on the phone, hung out, and went on a few dates. I thought I knew he was the one at that time because he made me feel different. Initially, we didn't have an argument. I like to travel. He was always down, and I like food. He would always take me to eat, and we went on trips initially, and he was just easy to talk to. And I'm real extra, and from childhood I wanted like the theatrics. We had been dating a few months. Valentine's Day came and me and my daughter took him dinner and some gifts, and he kind of casually threw around the idea, and I brushed it off because I was thinking it's too fast. Like, there's no way, he's serious. So I changed the subject. He brought the question back. The idea of us getting married. And he asked, and I was like, well, I guess, I wouldn't be closed off to the idea. But I asked him, but where's my ring? Like, is this your proposal? He was like, no, I just, want to see what your thoughts were. So I think a few weeks passed, and I was asleep in the bedroom one day, and him and my daughter came in and woke me up out of my sleep and asked me to come outside. They had a surprise for me. It's cold. I don't like cold. And I was timid. I remember like being nervous. And they made me close my eyes. When I got outside, my daughter told me to open them, and he was outside on bended knee with a ring, and we're all just standing there really, really cheesy. Nobody's saying anything. And my daughter was like, well, what's your answer? And I was like, nobody asked me a question. And then he asked, and I was like, but that's it. So he said a few other words, and he asked me again, and I said yes. So you want me to name a good time before the marriage or during that time with him? We had good times during the marriage, but I felt like his anger, his jealousy, the possessiveness overpowered the good times. We went on a lot of trips, and he would always ruin them. He would always pick a fight, and he never would let the fight go. And it would be about the smallest of things. Like, I want to go get in the shower, but he laid there and did nothing until I wanted to go get in the shower. So then now I say, well, I'm not going to be long. Just let me take a shower first. It would turn into a fight. We went on a trip to visit my best friend in Florida, and he picked a fight right before we left over my luggage. He was upset because he wanted to put his clothes in my suitcase, and I told him no, and he just exploded in the hallway. And I remember thinking, I'm gonna leave your ass right here in Mississippi. So I proceeded to pack my bag. I left. But my car started making a noise, and I called my friend to tell her he wasn't coming. She talked me out of it and was like, something's wrong with the car anyway. Go back, get him. So me and him had a conversation before we left, and I told him, if you ruin this trip for me and embarrass me in front of my friend and act a fool like you always do when we get home, we're gonna have a different conversation and you're not gonna like it. So he promised, you know, not to do anything crazy. We get to Florida, and for me, he was like, I started to notice he was like very, very childlike. He used to be jealous of my daughter. Like if we were playing cards, he would text my phone and say, we would be in the living room in the house. He would say, so you ignoring me and acting like I'm not in the bed? And I would text back and say, why are you texting me and we're in the house? So I would say, I'm gonna be here for a while. Just come in the living room where we are and play cards. He did the usual, and we got into it, and I did like I always do. I shut down and stopped talking. But we had an event to go to that Saturday, and we get to the door of the event, and he acts a plum fool and embarrasses me. My friend has to get between us to get him out of my face, and people are standing around watching, and I remember being really, really red in the face. I was thinking, this is it. But throughout the weekend, he kept doing things. And that Sunday morning, I got up and got on Facebook. We were in like this marriage group, and we were in the bed in the hotel, and he went in the marriage group and basically asked for assistance to basically tame or calm his wife, and made it seem like we were separated. Like, from reading whatever the post was, you would never think that we were on vacation in the hotel room together. And I read it and exploded. And I asked him, like, why wouldn't you wake me up to have this conversation with me? And I told him it would have never gotten this way had you just answered the question that I asked you. And I remember doing my hair and makeup because we were getting ready to leave, and I was just over it. My friend came downstairs to tell me that she was leaving, and she was like, what are you doing when you get home? I was filing for a damn divorce. I'm done. So I tell him, and he acts a bigger fool. We come home. I think it was like a 10-hour drive. I didn't say anything. Like, in my mind, I was plotting how to get out of this marriage and not have him kill me. Because previously he had told me, if you ever leave me, I will kill you. If I can't have you, nobody can. So I put him out. We got home, I put him out. Another 2 weeks went by. We tried to reconcile. Of course, he tried to make it seem like I wasn't having sex enough. I didn't love him enough. I didn't cook enough. It was always me, me, me. So I remember telling one of my sisters, like, maybe I am part of the problem. I'm gonna take him back. We'll try again. So he stayed gone for 2 weeks. He came home for a month. And I didn't recognize myself in that month. I was basically a prisoner in my own home. If I left, he called, he texted, he'll pitch a fit about what time are you being back? Why aren't you this? I guess you with a nigga. You don't love me today. It just it was unrelenting. But one Friday night, he called, and me and my daughter were playing cards. And I remember arguing with him, or at least trying to get off the phone. And I remember I had a migraine, and I got off the phone with him. And my daughter asked me, Mom, why do you tolerate that? Like, they don't get on your nerves. It's always something. And she said, I don't see how you do it. And I don't remember what my response was, but that was that Friday night. I had a migraine all night. All that Saturday, I was in the bed with a migraine. And Sunday, and I remember him like snatching me out of the bed, basically trying to force me to have sex with him. And I was like, I don't feel well. Like, so you're just gonna lay here and take it with my daughter in the living room? And he was like, you'll have sex with me any other time. I'm gonna get it today. I remember laying there thinking, do you fight him, or do you just lay here and make so he'll shut the fuck up? Like, shut up. And I remember his cell phone ringing, and it was his boss, and it kept that from happening. But he left and came back, and it was like on 1,000. He just was so aggravated with me. And I told him, you're talking at me and not to me, and you're yelling. I'm not having this conversation with you. And called me a bitch. He called me a bitch. And I told him to get out. And he was like, fine, I'll leave. But I'm gonna beat your ass before I leave. And I was like, I'm gonna call the police. He was like, I don't give a fuck. I bet you I beat your ass before they get here. And again, grew up fighting. So I was on for the challenge. But I heard a voice say, not today. In that moment, I was worried about my daughter's safety. And I was thinking, he is going to overpower you, but at least you won't take the beating. And I remember thinking, he'll probably kill you before you and your baby, before the police get here. And I could not find my cell phone. And I remember hollering from the bedroom, telling my daughter to call the police, and because I couldn't find my phone. And she just refused to do it. I guess she was like afraid because she had been hearing him escalate. And when I looked up, I didn't recognize him. His eyes were like wild, dark, and he was just different. And I was thinking, get out of this room. And I remember pushing the panic button, and I dialed 911. And I told them what was going on. And she asked me, were there any guns in the house? I was like, a lot. Like, he's a police officer and my daughter is here. Like, send the police. And I remember him saying, they ain't gonna do shit. They ain't gonna believe you when they get here. I'm one of them. I stayed in the living room with my daughter, and I remember like seeing her pace back and forth. And she kept saying, Mom, are you okay? Do you need anything? And I'm trying to calm her. And I thought it was crazy that my daughter was trying to calm me down and make sure that I was okay. And I had filed for a divorce when I put him out in March the first time. But I never completed the paperwork. I never sent everything back to the attorney because I was thinking, maybe we can fix this. We haven't even been married 2 years. Maybe we could go to counseling and fix it. But that day when he exploded and disrespected me like that in front of my daughter, I was done. And I kept thinking, you are showing her that this is okay. And it's not. And I didn't want her to grow up allowing a man to talk to her the same way that she had heard my husband talk to me so many times. And I didn't even remember. I didn't know for a long time that she could hear him. But in the morning when he would leave for work, before she left for school, she would come in there and check on me. And I was like, I'm fine. And she was like, you sure? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, I heard y'all arguing last night. And I would laugh and say, you heard us arguing or you heard that fool? And she would say, you're right. I heard him. She was like, I just wanted to check on you before I left for school today. Have a good day. I love you. I'll see you when I get back. Oh gosh. Yes. And the city we live in the police presence is heavy. And the neighborhood that I live in, there were probably 5-6 police cars. And I was tickled because they treated him like, and I had told her that he had guns in the house. So I think that they were expecting to walk into possibly a hostage situation or a more volatile situation than it was. But they aggressively handled him and refused to allow him to come back in the house. And one of them came in the house to check on me and my daughter and made sure we were okay. He asked me, can he get his work clothes? And I remember them allowing him to come back in. He had basically moved in. He had a lot of stuff in the house. But I remember thinking, surely he'll pipe down, in front of them. He got more aggressive and with the throwing stuff and basically trying to paint me as the bad guy or make me to be a whore. And went to accusing me of all this silly stuff. And I just was tired of hearing it. And I remember one of the police officers were whispering to him, but one of them aggressively told me to shut up. And I was like, you shut up. Y'all in my house. You and him can get out. I let him come in here to get clothes. and y'all are letting him like aggravate the situation, but you're making me out to be the bad guy because I defended myself. All of y'all get the hell out. I contacted my attorney the next morning and I told him what had happened in the past month, and I asked him what are my next steps because I want to get this over. I do believe the marriage had an impact on her, on my daughter. I remember he had been gone maybe a couple of weeks and we just didn't talk about it. Like, I put on this face like, you know, everything was okay. I think she asked me one day in the car to take her to therapy, and she was very vague about it. And I asked her why, and she was like, I've been asking you about therapy for a while. Like, I think it's time. And she said a lot of stuff has changed and I feel like I need therapy. But I also think it impacted her because he did a lot for her. Like, I was the disciplinarian. He was the one where she could get away with pretty much anything. He started trying to take her to drive. They spent a lot of time together when I was at work because my work shift at the time was 3 to 11:30. And he cooked for her. They played cards. They had a real relationship.
So the loss of that relationship.
Yes, the loss of a relationship impacted her, but she never verbalized it. And when I remember trying to talk to her about it, she kind of brushed it off like I do everything. I remember her saying, well, it doesn't really bother me one way or the other. Like, it's quiet. She's like, it's quiet. Nobody's slamming doors anymore. There's no yelling. And she was like, and I get to be free again. And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, I don't have to listen to you fussing at me about putting clothes on. But I could tell that it was her trying to brush over and smooth. I felt like that was her way of making light of the situation instead of telling me how she really felt about him not being there. Yes, I feel like I failed my daughter, but not because of the marriage. I don't feel like I failed her because of me getting a divorce. I feel like I failed her because during that time, I fell into this extreme depression. I was tired of fighting every day and I got snappy, real short-tempered. I was always exhausted. And of course, I was hiding it. So she never knew why I was so short or why I never wanted to go anywhere, why I was always in the bed, covered up. I would literally go to work at home and locked up in my room. And I feel like me being depressed and her not knowing what depression looked like for me put a wall between us. And she never really asked and I never really said, because I had that mindset of keep a child in a child's place. Like, she's already had to endure and experience so much just by living in the house. And I just didn't want to tell her. But looking back, I was really aggravated all the time. But it wasn't because of anything that she did. I was just exhausted and overwhelmed, and we were broke. Gosh, I discovered so much after the wedding. He was broke, had debt. His credit was bad. His checks were being garnished. His ex-wife asked for an increase in child support, which she was due. I discovered that he had another child that took child support, that took more money out of the house. Yes, and I was ashamed because here I am, a registered nurse. And I wasn't a new registered nurse. I had worked in so many departments. I can go anywhere and work. But at the same time, I have a double master's and I know how to manage money. And I had bought my own house at like the age of 27 alone. But my bank account was depleted. My savings account was depleted. My credit cards were almost maxed out. And on top of that, I had to deal with this narcissistic, insecure, jealous man every day. And I'm one of those people that if my finances aren't right, I'm not right. But I remember living check to check. I remember getting a letter in the mail. I think my mortgage was like 2 months behind. Capital One had sent me a statement with them threatening to repossess my vehicle. And I remember being embarrassed, and I didn't want to call my dad. I didn't want to tell anyone because I kept thinking, how did I get here? Like, and I would like study my accounts, and he just wasn't contributing. It's like I married this man and I had another child, an adult child. And it was just awful. I know for sure that I am not the only woman that has endured this. I know for sure I'm not the only one that has suffered in silence and blamed themselves. I know that if you can get out of any situation breathing, there's life and happiness on the other side of it. My most profound spiritual moment was finally accepting that I was different and it was okay, and that the church wasn't for me. I got lessons out of going to church, but from childhood, I was one of those people that always ask questions. And I know the old people always say, you're not supposed to know everything. I'm supposed to know something. Y'all are supposed to know something. Why can't you ever answer these questions? They're normal questions. But finally accepting that I was different, the things I knew, even without a person telling me, I guess they were like spiritual gifts, and I finally stopped being afraid to embrace them. And I started listening to my intuition more. My smells started to change. The way I felt about people or being in just around people. Not having a spouse that was a fake Christian because he claimed he was a minister and you're up in the pulpit preaching, but you've spent the last hour in the car berating me, telling me that I'm stupid and I'm nothing, and you want me to get in front of the church or in church and dry my face and smile and pretend like nothing has happened. But having him out of the house, I felt like the dark cloud left from over my house, just over my life, period. And I was able to be more spiritual. I was able to read more spiritual books. I was able to safely and loudly and unapologetically burn sage in my house without trying to explain why I wanted to. Or I could wear my spiritual bracelets or my stones and crystals and didn't have to worry about how he would feel or judge me or ridicule me for it. The future holds a lot of therapy, a lot more therapy sessions. During that time I was married, and after we were divorced, I started to pay more attention to myself and why I reacted the way I will react to certain things. Or I started to get to the root cause of a lot of things, actually. And it's been hard work and I don't like it. I hate crying, but living life loud, traveling, being unapologetic about who I am, and just being happy and not in debt because you're taking care of a grown man. I would like to be remembered as an awesome holistic nurse. I want my friends and family to always remember that they could call on me for medical advice or a diagnosis, even though I'm not a doctor or a nurse practitioner. A lot of times I know what's going on, but if they don't want to go to the doctor, or I'm able to give them an essential oil or an herb or a remedy to fix the problem. I also want to be remembered as an overcomer. I've overcome so much, and I want my daughter to be able to say, to be proud, or to say my mom was smart, or my mama was bossy, but you could go to her pretty much for anything. And if I didn't know, I would find the answer, whether it be about nursing or whatever it is. I know for sure that life goes on even after a divorce. A divorce doesn't mean that something is necessarily wrong with you, or that you are broken, or that you can't get married again. I know for sure that I'm a survivor. Everyone has a story to tell. They may not always tell it because of embarrassment, and just because the person smiles and they appear to be happy doesn't necessarily mean that they are. It's probably indeed a mask.